It's been a week since Avengers Infinity War was released, so it's time to talk spoilers. With a record-breaking opening weekend at the box office, this is one movie you need to check out. Grab a pint of Hunka Hunka Hulk and get ready for this bonus episode of the Wreck My Podcast. So we're going to talk a little bit today about Avengers Infinity War, and they broke the... Well, first off, this is Daniel, my coworker. He is a fellow nerd and probably knows a lot more than I do about these things, the logistics of stuff, since you've directed movies before, you've produced movies. You're kind of in that industry, so you know the back end of it, where I kind of just know the front end and I'm ignorant and go, why didn't they just do this? And you're like, well, because that would cost too much money.
Yes,
and
he's very ignorant.
Yeah, I'm very ignorant. I want my nerd things and eat it too. But they broke the box office over the weekend, record-breaking, and multiple levels. So they did $258.2 million in North America, which was about $10 million more than Force Awakens that had that title up to this point.
Did you see the ad that Kathleen Kennedy put in Variety?
No, I didn't.
So, there's a tradition of this sort of thing going back to Jaws and the original Star Wars, because Jaws was the top grosser of its day, and Star Wars beat it.
Mm-hmm.
So Spielberg took out an ad in Variety of R2-D2 fishing for a shark.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
And a couple of years later, E.T. beat Star Wars. And so Lucas took out an ad saying congratulations, and it was E.T. and the Star Wars characters together, That's funny. And then in the 90s, Star Wars beat E.T. again when it was re-released.
Okay.
And Spielberg took out another ad. I don't remember what the ad was, but congratulating Lucas. They've done this back and forth thing with the ads throughout history. So when Avengers beat Star Wars this weekend, she took out an ad Variety, and it's Rey's hand with the lightsaber, and it said, "To Earth's mightiest heroes, congratulations," and she's handing Iron Man the lightsaber.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I mean, it's funny now, too, though, because back then, those were probably all owned by different companies, where now it's they're owned by Disney. So it's
absolutely right.
The overlord above all this is going on. But that's pretty cool. That's a fun tip there. But internationally, it killed as well. It did $382.7 million internationally, which means globally, it did $640 million, which means it's a number one global opening weekend.
Well, I was having a conversation with my girlfriend about it this weekend, because we were talking about Marvel versus Star Wars and actors in the movies, and she said that she felt like, that Star Wars had a little more prestige to it, and I said, well, only for our generation.
Yes.
We were in the theater this weekend, and there was a scene. Can we talk spoilers right now?
All spoilers. Okay. We're going to get into spoilers in a little bit.
So the scene when they're fighting Thanos on Titan at the end, and he throws the moon at them.
Yeah.
And Iron Man kind of goes flying towards the camera, and it's like a big explosion.
Yes.
And there was a kid in the audience who went wow!
Yeah.
Like a little kid.
Yeah.
And I said to her, well, that kid, to him, he probably loves Marvel movies. To
and
him,
this is
that's
that culmination of everything.
That's the biggest thing in his life that he's
seriously,
ever seen. So, to us, at our age, we grew up with Star Wars, and the Marvel movie is just kind of 10 years old. It's more of a newer franchise for us. But if you're 10 or even older, if you're 12 or 13, these movies have been coming out almost your entire life.
Yeah, and it's true that 2008 is when this started, so we were all old enough to know this is a good property, but it wasn't this spectacular thing we've never seen before. Where Star Wars, yes, we were all young. The older generation was young when the originals came out. We were young when the re-releases came out, so we got to experience that in theaters. And these were the things that we experienced that were eye-openers for us. That were like, whoa, this is what you can do with a movie. And yeah, you're right. That's how these kids feel. This is what you can do with a movie.
And we're
that's
a little
amazing.
Jaded too. We're so used to special effects, having grown up with those movies, and we got used to this idea of, as we get older, movies are going to get better, and we're going to see more and more crazy things, right? But when we were kids, what we saw, the Phantom Menace and all this, the pod race and stuff. That was a huge revelation in special effects to us. So imagine a kid, you're 9 years old, you're growing up, and you're watching this movie or Black Panther, and those special effects are your first introduction to what can be done in a movie.
It's where do you go from there?
No wonder they think these old movies are quaint. Because it's a whole other level. It's almost like when we were kids. This is the stuff you could only have done in animation.
Yes.
Only a cartoon could have brought these characters together and had these massive intergalactic stakes.
Yeah.
And we watched shows like that.
Yeah,
we had
of course.
shows like that. But to these kids, it's real.
Yeah. This is the bar. It's no longer the highest you can go for them. And it's almost like if you try and give a kid now a PlayStation 2 and be like, here, go play Metal Gear Solid 2, they're going to be like, what is this terrible piece of crap? they're so used to what graphics are now and everything. So it is amazing that like these kids, and you start to think, where does it plateau? Because every year it's like, wow, I didn't think they could do that. Wow, that looks amazing. Wow, where does it get to that point? Because I mean, now we're doing things where like in the Star Wars movies, we're bringing young Carrie Fisher back, we're bringing Tarkin back, and there's still that slight uncanny valley, but they're getting really good at it. That's starting to go away. Are we going to get to that point where like CGI animated characters could be indecipherable from human characters at some point? Like, is that the next level? Or are we going to plateau at some point where we're at and just be like, okay, this is where we are. Technology can't really take us any farther.
I think that you could get to a point where in terms of like in a still image, in terms of texture and appearance, they could be so realistic that it's indistinguishable. I think what's always going to be tricky is the movement and the performance, because even today with the sophisticated motion capture that they have, a lot of the performance that you're seeing is still an animator with a little pencil in a computer world.
Oh, that's a phone.
Do we have to pause?
That's okay.
Keyframing for animation and to make the eyebrow move and the little things with the face, little things, and often they'll watch reference of the actor, but they're still doing it by hand. Yeah. And so there's an argument that no matter how good at that you get, it's its own sort of art form that can never equal reality, the actual intuitiveness of me just making slight micro gestures with my face. It's true. And so the human brain will always be able to tell the difference between like a real face and it's just like people who've had like plastic surgery, horrible accidents, and they lose the ability to use their face in the full way. There are actually receptors in the brain that tell us that person's not human. Like we look for those things as evidence of humanity. I forget what it's called. It's like the gyro something in your brain is what tells you this face is a face, and if you don't have that working, you can't differentiate faces. That's right. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, this movie just blew up. It also broke the record for #1 Saturday box office, 83 million. Wow. So best Saturday in North America ever. And I think it did best Sunday too. It was like 69 million. Sure. And I think Friday was 103 or something, or 113 or something like that. So it killed this weekend. Yeah, it's hard to win the weekend without like at this point, because we've had so many high grossing films that really just blowing it out of the park. Well, it beat the Saturday record, which before was Jurassic World, which came out middle of the summer. So like kids didn't really have anything going on, no homework. Like, this is not really summer. I mean, they really technically summer, but not really. They really pumped this movie in the marketing, and also I think there was this sense of if I don't see it soon, get spoiled. I'm gonna get it ruined for me. So it's one of those movies where people really ran out to see it. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it lasts in terms of its run. We have movies coming out. And was it just like everybody went to see it the first weekend, and then that's it, or will people go back? Like I was going to go back, but I'm a MoviePass subscriber, and while I love MoviePass, they've just changed the terms of service, and now I can't go see the same. It's the same with me. I would have seen it 2 or 3 times, and probably I'm only going to see it once now. So yeah, I'm probably not going to go see it again, which kind of gives the theater industries their point. Like I'm not willing to pay full price to see the movie. Yeah, and that's what they're afraid of. But they're making their full price on MoviePass. So I'm like, those two, the movie theaters and movies just got to get together. They got to get on the same page. It's like the Korean War. They just got to make peace. Do it. Yeah, just do it for the betterment of humanity. That's right. Let us be the winners here. Come on. But for people who are paying full price, or who live in states where it's cheaper, or who get the discount tickets, or like I used to do, whatever, like. Is this a movie where people are going to go back? I mean, I can imagine if I was a kid, if I was, a teenager and I was really into these movies, I would see it. I mean, I used to see the Star Wars movies almost 10 times. I typically see Star Wars movies like once in 3D, once in 2D, because I like to see a movie in 2D so I get the story. And then after that, I'll go see a 3D where it's like, all right, now I'm here for the spectacle. I know the story. I don't need to like listen to development as much and everything. But I don't know. I don't feel like this movie necessarily needed to be seen in 3D. I heard good things about like IMAX and all that, but I'm like, I don't know. It looked good in 2D, and I'm good with that. I think that they tiptoed that line in the choreography and the fight sequences where 3D would be a little too much for my brain to handle. I feel like I wouldn't know what was going on. Where in 2D, I was at least able to kind of keep track. Like that final scene in Wakanda where they're fighting was good and everything. But there's a lot of parts where it's on Titan you were talking about where I'm like, I would get lost with the 3D of it all. A lot of it was crowded. I would be curious to see it in IMAX because I was reading that they shot the entire movie in the digital IMAX cameras. So I'm curious because I was pretty sure it was regular widescreen and we were watching in the standard theater. So I'm curious to see like what the image looks differently if it's opened up. Yeah. Do you maybe do some of those sequences seem a little more a little less crazy in the open gate of the IMAX camera. I'd be curious. I don't know that I'd still want to pay the full price to go see the IMAX though.
Yeah, exactly. It's the price you get used to what you're paying, your $10 a month for Movie Pass, and then going outside of that, you're kind of like, well, is it worth it? Like, but speaking to like kids really loving this movie and everything, at the end of it, because when I went to the theater, there were a lot of kids around me. At the end of it, I was like, I don't know if I would have brought my child to this, honestly, under 13 years old. This, compared to most Marvel movies, this was intense. Like, there was a lot of death. There was a lot of... the part, especially where Nebula's getting tortured, a baby started crying. I'm like, who brought the baby into this theater?
I don't know about 12. I think it's still a fairly light movie, and there's only a handful of real deaths, and most of the deaths are, like, very subtle. Even throwing her off the cliff, like
you don't see
she's
her
just kind of laying there. Like I don't know that a kid would necessarily feel that was.
And I guess most of the deaths were like whisk away kind of thing. I think about it because I used to think about this all the time in Star Wars. They were rated PG up to a certain point, and I used to always think like when the explosions happen, I'm like, someone just died, and it's like I don't know if as a kid though you really connect that dot. You're like, oh, an explosion, and So I guess that's true in this sense too. I just feel like it was so dark. Like the whole thesis behind it was that, hey, we are growing too fast and we need to essentially genocide to create a livable environment. Which, what did you think of Thanos? I thought that he was probably one of the best Marvel villains only because they gave him so much time to have motivation that was believable. It wasn't just like twirly mustache, I want to rule the world kind of thing.
They've been setting him up a long time, and he was in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, so like it wasn't like a totally new villain.
But we really didn't know much about him except big purple guy who sits in a chair, and this really kind of gave you to like it almost made you have sympathy for the devil. You're like, okay, I get why he's doing this. He saw his planet destroyed by overpopulation, and no one was willing to make the hard calls. He's like, I'm here to make the hard call. You guys may not like it, but in the long run, I'm saving you, which is a demented way to look at it, but you understand.
And you would know better than I. I'm assuming that motivation comes from the comics.
Not really, no. Okay. The motivation in the comics, so there's different variations. There's Infinity Gauntlet. There's Infinity, which is the newer one that came out that I'm more familiar with. His motivation in that is that he is just obsessed with death. So he's trying to appease this personified bodification of death, which is the same person that Deadpool's kind of like enamored with because Deadpool can't die, and in the comics he's trying to like get death to love him. Same thing with Thanos. He's just so obsessed with death that he's trying to sacrifice all these people so that death will like him more.
Well, that's interesting because then that means like, so this whole idea of I got to kill half the population so that there'll be enough resources.
Yeah.
This is all actually out of a season 1 Star Trek episode from 1966. So if it's not from the comics, you have to suspect.
Well, this is an issue that's kind of been on the forefront for the past like 15 or 20 years with like global warming and all that. It's like, it's this idea that how long will resources sustain us if we just keep growing and growing and growing and don't do anything to change. That's essentially where I felt it came from. It wasn't as heavy-handed as some things are. I forget what movie it was, but my biggest complaint with that movie was that it was like the Green Party wrote it. I can't remember what it was.
I think
but
it's interesting because, we're so quick to... I feel like in these scenarios, we're so quick to like condemn because we all sort of have accepted this idea that every life has value and it's better for everyone. Really, it's better for everyone to die than for some to live at the expense of others. That's sort of a cultural value we have. In the Star Trek episode, there was a planet where there was a famine, and for whatever reason it was never explained, there was no way to get them help in time. So the governor executes half the population at random, so that there'll be enough food.
Yeah.
But then then what happens is rescue ships show up and everyone's been killed, and so he's arrested. And he claims that, if the rescue ships hadn't gotten there ahead of schedule, like he would have been considered a hero because he would have saved all these people. And, Kirk was a kid supposedly was a kid at the time, and he was a witness, and there's only some people who've seen this guy. It's a whole mystery. But it's like in both that and this, it's like, you always have to avoid a certain plot questions to justify this sort of thing. Like, okay, there's not enough resources. You're going to kill half the people. There's no other way. Can you just take half the people and bring them to another planet?
Yeah.
Like what? Like, they're literally lining people up and shooting them.
Yeah. Well, in this one too, they made it very specific that it was random, because Thanos said my idea was at random a lottery would pick who gets to live and die, and I believe in his mind he was like, I'm part of that as well. I'm willing to die to keep this. And the reason why I think he's not willing to die now for it is because he feels like he is the gatekeeper for it. And I think when he snaps his fingers, it wasn't necessarily like, hey, I'm choosing who gets whisked away.
Absolutely.
He just snapped his fingers. He's like, whatever half leaves, they leave. And then that begs the question, is the Soul Stone picking them? Like, because there's a whole plot sequence about the Soul Stone being more wise than the other stones and everything. There's a lot of questions still to be answered, which is why this is part 1 of 2. We're going to see, hopefully, these things get answered a little bit more.
Do you think the average person knows that? I feel like I've talked to a lot of people who don't realize this is part 1 of 2.
I think that I am a super nerd that follows not only the comics, but the back end of it all, and I knew that they filmed both parts at the same time. I knew that this was supposed to be Avengers Infinity War Part 1, Part 2. I think most people going are like, I like superheroes, and the Marvel movies have been funny so far. They get there, they see all these characters they love die, and then they don't, because here's the problem. If you're going to do it this way, it needed to be done kind of like Lord of the Rings, where they were released really quickly after each other. Weren't they? Or no, it was like a year apart, but still, that's fairly quick.
Well, I think it used
this
to be
is
quicker.
like a year and a half with multiple movies in between. I think that's what confuses people.
And my understanding is, part 2 is coming out in May, but it is multiple movies in between.
Yeah.
And also, a year is longer than it used to be. In other words, when Lord of the Rings movies were coming out every year, that was considered fast, very fast.
Yeah, because Star Wars was every 3.
Yes, most franchise films.
007 was every like 3 or 4 also.
Well, 007 had been doing 2 for a long time.
Oh, okay.
That was sort of something they had really got that onto a machine, but they were the only ones really doing that. Star Wars was 3, X-Men was 3,
yes.
Spider-Man was actually 2 in that between the first 2.
Yes.
But I
think the third one didn't come out for a little while after.
And that was sort of the thing, like the fastest you could crank out a movie was 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're going to greenlight this right away, we're going to get it going, and in 2 years you'll have a sequel. That was sort of like the way it worked back then. So for Lord of the Rings to come out once a year, it was very quick. Now, like, we're getting a Star Wars movie every year.
Yes.
It's very common for us to get films from a franchise every year. So to wait a year for this doesn't seem particularly short.
Yes.
It's just like, okay.
I feel like it would have benefited them to be a little bit more heavy-handed at the end, instead of it saying like Thanos will return, to have it say to be continued or something, so that people are aware. Because let's be honest though,
or
it's
Avengers,
like
come see Avengers 4.
Yeah,
announce the title.
Or see the end of it or something. Because even in the biggest cliffhanger ever is Back to the Future 2, and it says to be continued, because it's like, we want no doubt in your mind that you think like, hey, we're just leaving you with nothing. Like, and this was cool because it felt cathartic in the sense that I felt like this part of the story was told, but there's more, where it ends with Thanos doing what he said, I'm going to watch the sunset on a universe that's thankful for what I've done. I
like the cliffhanger. I read an interview with the directors. They were saying, we thought about ending it before he gets all the stones, but then we thought, well, that's just like a pause.
It's too much like the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2.
And whereas here, it's like, okay, the movie's sort of over. The story is over.
I should probably break to get that phone call, because someone's really...
It could be different people.
Well, I think that it's probably just the same salesperson calling, because they're really persistent.
Probably is all it is. But no, you're ending the story in a natural place in terms of the story is over.
Yes.
Anything could happen after, but there's really no dangling threads or anything.
No, it's true, because you could stop right here and that could be it. It'd be depressing, but that could be it.
And I think what could be cool, and maybe they'll give us a surprise and play with this in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but I doubt it. Since you got this year gap, wouldn't it be sort of cool to have a Marvel movie set in this period where half the people are gone? With just with minor characters.
Yes.
Not with the characters in Avengers, because the next thing they should do is try to save the world.
Yeah.
But like, you have these other movies.
You didn't see Ant-Man in this movie, and they kind of wrote him. Yeah.
Where was Hawkeye?
Yeah, they wrote both those characters off in the sense that, hey, they're on house arrest, so they can't be here for the world ending. But that would be a good play then, to be like, they weren't part of this. Yeah. They're still alive. Do something in this time period before the world gets saved, when like half of humanity's gone. Like, that would be cool if Ant-Man and they do like a bank heist, because they're like, well, the bankers are gone.
Right.
Like, we can just stroll in here,
Or any number of things. Like,
just
because I think the cool part about the MCU is the idea of the integrated world, and that things have consequences. So to let this have some consequences, even if they're ultimately undone in some sort of
Well, speaking to that, I have a thing that I realized that I want to run by you because it's a continuity inconsistency with the timeline because I was looking up some timeline stuff. So the Avengers, the Battle of New York, takes place in 2012. Mm-hmm. We know at the beginning of Spider-Man, that's when the Vulture, Adrian Toomes, he's supposed to be cleaning up the city after that attack in 2012. But the government kicks him out, and that's when he decides to become a villain. Then we get a title card in Spider-Man that says 8 years later. Yeah. So Spider-Man Homecoming technically takes place in 2020 on that title card. This movie, Infinity War, takes place in like the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, if you follow the rest of the timeline of Winter Soldier and all that. So why does Spider-Man Homecoming take place 3 years after Infinity War?
I think it's just gotta be
because that's the thing is I go, well, maybe that was Sony's part because they just messed that up. Like they put that title card, it should have said 4 instead of 8 or something like that. Positive it says 8 years. My other thing is, because here's my problem. I wanna believe it's just yeah,
that's what I would think.
A problem. But I can't imagine that Kevin Feige didn't go into that. Like he may not have been on like the dailies or watched the end edit, but he goes to the premiere and goes, 8 years, that doesn't fit the timeline, and be like, hey, just change the title card real quick because that doesn't take any time at all.
The studio politics you're talking about may be more to blame than anything else.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've been looking at the timeline lists, and everybody seems to put Homecoming before Infinity War.
Well, it makes sense if you do, but that's my question then. What if I mean, this is getting like tinfoil hat kind of thing. What if they told us the Spider-Man story, that's an alternate timeline that gets changed in Infinity War 2, so what we watched is technically nothing that has come to pass yet, but will come to pass once time is reversed and a tangent, like multiverse reality goes that way, which is getting way too heady, and I feel like they'll shoot themselves in the foot because people won't understand that.
I think it's not, because I do think what they're going to try to do with this is they're actually going to they're going to use this science fiction mechanics to write out actors that need to be sunsetted.
Yeah.
So I think Robert Downey Jr. Is going to be done after Infinity War 2.
I think so.
And so then to have Homecoming with him in it, set after Infinity War, I think is probably too much.
Yeah.
Now, the other question though is they do want to do a Spider-Man 2, and that's I think 2020. So it's after Infinity War 2. It's after all these things coming out. Is that going to be attached? Like how well is that going to be integrated to the new sort of Avengers world?
Well, this is what I assume they're going to do with to be able to retcon the story of that everyone doesn't die, and to be able to give these characters who no longer have contracts kind of a send-off, but keep these characters by recasting them. Is I think that they're going to do a time shift back. They're going to create a whole secondary alternate timeline where that doesn't happen, and what we're going to see is these characters are going to be portrayed by different people, something of that sort.
I don't think we're going to get any recasting.
You don't think we're going to get recasting?
I think that what's probably going to happen, most likely...
Well, Bucky Barnes is probably going to be Captain America at some point.
That's possible. I'm not talking about other characters playing these, like, the icons, right?
Yeah.
So, if you want to have a new Captain America, you might absolutely have that. And even a new Iron Man. Right? Like
because in the comics right now, they have that girl who's Iron Man, Iron Heart or something. Sure. Yeah, I forget her real name. But
I think more likely, with Bucky, it might do it just because he's already been introduced.
And he kind of spilled the beans on stage a while back. He was there, like, asked him a question, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be of course, Winter Soldier's gonna be Captain America or something, But
I don't see them introducing out of the blue new actors to take over stuff. Taking characters they've already sort of won you over with and transitioning them absolutely probably will happen. But I think what you're going to see after Infinity War is, and the theory I've read online that I think makes the most sense is, in order to undo all this, some of these characters will have to sacrifice their lives in exchange to get everything back.
Well,
so think about who's still alive now.
Yeah, it's the main cast.
Most of which, if not all, probably want to bounce.
Yeah.
So
that's why I feel like Iron Man and Captain America are going to give it up. Because one, Iron Man seems to be the crux of this story. Doctor Strange gives his life up to keep Iron Man in the game. Captain America, his whole shtick is not giving one life for another. He's willing to sacrifice himself. And those two are the ones that if they're gone, they're the rift in the Avengers. If they're both gone, there's no real rift anymore.
And the directors were saying that, the reason there's not a lot of Captain America or Black Widow in this movie is because they're in part 2.
Okay, more. So I thought it was also just because this one took more of a cosmic focus, and they're not really able to be out in space like the Guardians and Thor are and Iron Man.
Their arcs and all the stories that were sort of happening, and in this stage of the story, because she goes with Captain America's not going to be questioning. Mm-hmm. He's the kind of guy who's like, okay, there's an alien, I'm going to fight it. Like there's not going to be any self-doubt. I'm not going to help you because I'm fighting with Tony. That's not his character.
No.
So there's not much for him in this part of the story. But once you see this horrible thing happen, now maybe you're going to get something. Maybe now he'll have questioning. Maybe he'll wonder, okay, did I bring this about through my failure?
Because I wasn't willing to go the step I needed to go.
So
that's true.
That'll be really interesting. And I do think that it would be nice to finish off, for people who like us who've been around since phase 1, finish off some of those storylines definitively.
Yes.
Might actually be nice.
Yes.
Because it's like, Iron Man 3 was supposed to be the end, and then Johnny Jr. kept sort of extending his contract.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I'll do Spider-Man. I'll
do this. I'll do this. I'll do this.
And it's like, and that's great. We've loved having him, but at the same time, it's like, okay, let's wrap it up. It's been a lot of movies.
We have our 2 new witty characters in Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. Let them kind of take that place now.
And we also have Black Panther, who to me feels like the new Captain America.
Oh yeah, he's great in the sense that he knows, he has a very specific what's right and wrong, just like Captain America. And he's super cool in the sense that you can also go outside of what Captain America could do with technology stuff, kind of like Iron Man has, only because Wakanda, what don't they have? They can keep introducing new things. And I love that feeling of like 007 in Black Panther, where it's like he goes to Shuri, his sister, and she's like, Q. It's like, hey, look at this cool thing I got for you now. And then he goes out into the field and uses it. And, I love that aspect of it. So it would be cool to keep that going.
The movie Black Panther felt to me like the first Avenger, like Captain America, first Avenger, in terms of it had its own story, its own villains and everything, but it felt like it was bleeding really well into the movie. My perhaps disappointment, and I get it because the movies came out so close together, I wish that Black Panther had been a little more tied into the plot of this movie.
Well, I think that it's actually even more than it was supposed to be from the beginning. I think they reshot some Wakanda stuff to put it more in there after that. I think they were like, oh, Black Panther did great. We need to throw in like a Wakanda scene here,
they were probably a little nervous about the Wakanda scene.
Yeah, I don't think they assumed it was going to be as big as it went. It was kind of like, I feel how they felt about Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think that they thought that movie was going to take off as well as it did.
And the Guardians were heavily featured.
Oh, yeah. Movie. They were, apart from Thanos, I think they were what pushed the storyline along more than any other characters. Especially since Peter Quill's kind of the reason why the plan didn't work. Yeah. And then Gamora had a bunch, there was that big relation.
Chris Pratt is such a douche, isn't he? Divorces his wife, and he put on all that weight, which they call out in the movie.
I know.
It's like, dude, you're in Marvel. You can't keep the weight off.
That's so funny. Well, I know I read an article a long time ago that Anna Faris said she preferred him as chubby Chris Pratt.
So maybe he put the weight on.
Maybe he put the weight on before.
He was trying to
yes, or something. And then he's like, well, I can't get this off now before I got to film. Because that is pretty funny. They called him out in the movie and everything. I feel like this movie, do you feel like it bounced around too much, or it was just in that right spot?
There was a lot. There were a lot of plots. Mm-hmm. Somebody said it felt like an extended episode of Game of Thrones. Yeah, that's true in terms of there were a lot of plots. And
Peter Dinklage is showing up.
They were very not connected. I mean, arguably
I thought they were connected only because they seemed to come back around, and everyone, most characters kind of intertwined with each other. The stories seemed intertwined.
Except for the Titan stuff. So Tony and now just Gamora, but they're stuck out on Titan. They really had no interaction. Once they left New York, they had no interaction with the rest of the movie except for Thanos.
Yeah.
And so that sort of sucked because it would have been nice to see, and I guess I'm sure we're going to get it in the next one, but it would have been nice to see Iron Man and Captain America have to meet again.
Well, I think they were saving that because
he didn't
they haven't seen each other in a long time.
So things like that didn't quite. So I think it felt like there were two movies happening.
Yeah.
One was Cap and Doctor Strange on the ship and that whole thing, and then the other was just the stuff on Earth.
Yeah.
And that was probably, other than that, because within those there was still a lot going on.
Yeah.
But other than that, because I'm not even sure when, the Thor stuff, even though it's in space, that actually ties into the Earth stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of
because he comes back then.
And Rocket, I just realized Rocket ends up on Earth, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's still alive. I
Yes.
think. Where was I going with that?
Well, Rocket's still alive.
Yeah, Rocket's still alive. Groot got pulled away, didn't he? Or is Groot still alive? I don't remember either. We know Rocket's still alive, and I like that part with him and Bucky Barnes, where he's like holding him up like a gun and he's shooting.
Yeah.
It just, I feel like Rocket just kept getting like people just kept making fun of him, kind of. But that's his shtick.
Yeah.
He's like a little guy, and he's not gonna take it, but like he can take it to a point, you know. Like Thor kept calling him Rabbit, and he never really like corrected him.
Yeah.
But he also, I feel like Rocket was trying to push himself further because he was like, time to be a captain, and was like trying to talk to Thor about it, but he's not very good at it. He's just not. He doesn't connect with people well because he's a raccoon, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I like that they. It's cool that the main Avengers are still alive, and there's a few extra characters there because I mean you have some of the characters from Wakanda are still alive that can help them. You have who else was alive? Just Rocket? Is he the only one?
From the Guardians?
I mean, like, besides the main Avengers.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, a lot of characters.
Well, Gamora.
Gamora, but we don't know whether she's going to come back or not.
No, she will.
She will, but whether or not she's going to come back is like some type of soul thing. I mean...
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Nebula.
Oh, Nebula, yes. Yeah, Nebula's there.
Nebula's with Tony on Titan,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. I like that pairing because she's half robot.
Yeah.
And arguably Tony's half robot.
Yeah. Well, to speak to the comics, Nebula is the one that actually gets the gauntlet and reverses everything in Infinity Gauntlet, I believe. Don't fact check me on that. One of the Infinity storylines is Nebula. So I feel like they're just going to transfer that to Tony, where Nebula will still be involved, but Iron Man will be the one that gets hold of the gauntlet, which is another thing that people brought up, which I didn't realize in the last scene, is that the Infinity Gauntlet looks all charred and destroyed. I honestly didn't catch that in that last scene, that it was like that. I must have been paying too much attention to that beautiful sunset. But
well, no, it's in the scene when he says you should have.
Oh, when he snaps his fingers.
Yeah.
So then that begs the question where I'm thinking, okay, does the Infinity Gauntlet, it's like a one-shot kill, but you only get one chance at it, where snap, boom, it's done. The Infinity Stones are still there, but the Gauntlet can't really do power anymore. Because here's my thing that I noticed. So when they go to that like dwarf star place that Peter Dinklage's character was, I forget what it's called, like Vormir or something like that. There was the mold of the Infinity Gauntlet, which begs the question then, the Infinity Gauntlet that we see in Asgard on the first Thor in the background, is that the real... Yeah, there was. It was like in the background when they're walking through their little...
Like a
museum thing. And even in Thor Ragnarok, Hela like pushes it over because it's still on Asgard and everything. Is that the real Infinity Gauntlet? And the one that we see Thanos at that end scene go, fine, I'll do it myself, was when he went to that planet. Because Peter Dinklage's character tells us he came here, he said he would kill everyone if I didn't make him another gauntlet. I made it, he still killed everyone. But that means then that gauntlet was made not that long ago, which means this probably isn't the same Infinity Gauntlet. Does that mean that more can be created? Because then all they got to do is go to this dude and be like, here, make me another one.
These are interesting questions that were created by it does feel like they got a little lost in their own continuity.
Yeah.
Like, how many Infinity Gauntlets are there? They've been setting it up for so long.
Because or is that just a fun Easter egg that we're not supposed to care about?
It does feel like in this movie that he got there recently.
Yes.
But that doesn't make sense at all with what we've seen, because we've seen him have this Infinity Gauntlet before.
Yeah.
So I see two possibilities. One is that this dwarf has been sitting in this cold space station for a long time.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on screen that says it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably true. Like, that's probably, if you were to sit down with them and ask them, that's probably what they would say.
Yeah.
But I think that still means that, yes, he could theoretically... The reason Thanos charred his hands is he didn't want him making another Infinity Gauntlet.
Yes.
Like, he theoretically could totally make another Infinity Gauntlet. He's got the mold. He's got the power of the star. He's got the skill.
Yeah.
But I also think that, and we may find out that the reason it's broken is that he built it that way.
To only be able to do it once. So once his plan's done, no one else can do anything to reverse it?
Well, that, or just like, so that it's not this ultimate weapon with unlimited ammunition. You know
That's
what I
true.
mean? Like, that may have been part of Peter Dinklage's plan.
Yeah.
We may find that out.
Yeah, like he sabotaged it slightly.
Yeah.
That's true. So yeah, these are all good questions, hopefully, that will be answered in the second one. Sometimes you get a little nervous that they're just going to leave these things dangling when you really look at the nitty-gritty of it all. But I had one more question, and I don't remember what it was.
Well, I would hope that they don't use... I think the nice thing is they didn't make it just a conventional time travel plot.
Yeah.
Which would be
at least not yet.
Yeah, but I don't... There's also no time travel, aside from Doctor Strange, which is now part of the Infinity Gauntlet, in these movies. So there's no mechanism for them to...
Well, what then makes me wonder... I mean, we kind of know there's going to be a time travel aspect to the second one, only because set photos showed Captain America in his first Avengers garb.
If there is, maybe Captain America goes back to the 40s and gets to live happily ever after with Peggy.
Oh, that's nice.
And an alternate, timeline.
Yeah. Maybe Tony Stark makes it so he never actually went with the Jericho to there and has to be Iron Man.
No, because that changed his life for the better.
I guess that's
I don't
true.
think Tony would ever change that.
That's true.
But I don't think Tony Stark's story requires time travel.
But it would be nice for Captain to get to go back and just be with Peggy Carter, and then all of Peggy Carter is no longer canon.
Yeah, but that's okay because they're going to want to go forward with sort of new stuff anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So resetting the canon or whatever isn't really a problem.
And I think that I don't think that they had this when they started this story, but recently I think that their idea too is once we're done with the Avengers, hopefully this Fox merger is going through. Now we have the X-Men and the Fantastic Four to play with. That gives us a whole new realm we haven't even tapped into yet. Another 10 years of material I'm sure they can pull out of those franchises.
Well, I also think it's going to be smart for them at some point. And I think this is the lesson Star Wars is wrestling with right now. At a certain point, you want to cap the canon off. You want to finish it. You want to put a nice ending on it, package it, and put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And at some point, they're going to need to do that with the MCU. And they may feel like this first 10 years after Avengers Infinity War Part 2, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then the movies after that are sort of their own thing. Problem is, they've got Black Panther sequels, they got Spider-Man sequels, they got all these sequels that are tied into the MCU that people want to see. So that's going to force them to leave certain things open.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see. I was not a fan of Phase 2 very much, but I really feel like Phase 3, which I'm only sort of getting caught up with now, works a lot better than Phase 2.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
So the question is then, do they take those lessons and how do they use them in the future?
Yeah. I agree. And so just to cap it off, we'll go to the very, very end of the movie. What do you think of the tease at the end? Because you said you didn't get it.
I did not.
I was a little confused too. I assumed I knew what it was, but I had to double check because I'm not a huge Captain Marvel fan, so I didn't know what her symbol really looked like, honestly, but I know her name, I know of her powers. I watched the X-Men animated series, so I know that Rogue got her powers from Captain Marvel and everything. But you said you had to kind of look it up because you weren't going to know.
I didn't know what it was. The symbol, I didn't know what it was. So I looked it up. And I saw that was Captain Marvel, and I knew they were making a Captain Marvel movie, and I knew it was set in the 90s. I like how it's a little pager because like it's the 90s.
It's like an intergalactic pager.
So we're going to find out. See, that's a situation where there's a movie coming out in the interim that's going to give us information that's going to be relevant to the next one. That's why I'm actually rather curious about Ant-Man and the Wasp and wondering,
like, how's that going to fit in?
Is it just going to be a fun a movie that sort of ignores all this?
Yeah.
Or is it also going to feed in because we know Captain Marvel will? So that's interesting. But of course, the best part of that whole tag was Samuel Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
Almost saying, mother. And
mother, what? And then, it disappeared. It's great. So. It's funny because we started off the little post-credit teasers with Samuel L. Jackson, and we're kind of near ending with Samuel L. Jackson. So it's a good little bookend there.
And I'm glad they haven't killed him. I've sort of missed him in the movies.
Yeah.
There were a couple he wasn't in at all. Like I don't think he was in Age of Ultron at all. So I
don't think so
I've
either.
missed that, and that actually as an act, he was the top grossing actor for a long time, and then Harrison Ford caught back up with Force Awakens, and because they weren't putting him in these Marvel movies, he wasn't getting back up to the top.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they count this one towards his gross, even though he's only at the end.
Yeah, very,
because that's a rivalry I enjoy watching.
Yes.
I like to see them racing, and it keeps Harrison Ford acting too, and so it's great for everybody.
That's funny. Well, that is Marvel Infinity War. Some fun things with that. We're looking forward to next year getting questions answered, and I'm very curious about Ant-Man and the Wasp as well. I think that they're just going to set it right after Civil War and just leave it at that and kind of be like, not going to touch Infinity War.
We might get an end credits scene, if nothing else. where people disappear or something. Like,
yeah.
Even if the movie doesn't touch it.
Well, it would be cool because Ant-Man and Wasp is next, then it's Captain Marvel, then it's Infinity War Part 2 or whatever they're going to call it, which I assume... I mean, what do you think they're going to call it in that sense?
I think they'll call it Avengers Forever.
Yes, forever. I honestly do not think that it's going to give anything away to the plot. I personally think the reason why Kevin Feige and the Russo brothers decided to pull it is because they wanted focus to be on this movie, not on the future. But I think they kind of reverse that effect now because everyone's like, oh, it's going to give something away. So now more people were focused on what the story was, what the name is.
Yeah,
I think they I
think it worked out for them because it got people. People were interested in this movie. They did think I should need to go see this.
Yeah.
Whereas in the old days, if you did Part 1, Part 2, a lot of people used to be like, well, I'll just wait for Part 2.
Yeah, and then see both. I just feel like they had the Streisand effect. Like they were trying to kind of sweep this under the rug and not have too much, but everyone's like, now we have to think about it. So I think it's just going to be like, this was Infinity War. I think the other one will be like Infinity Gauntlet or something. Like, maybe. I don't think it's going to be...
Actually, no. He said it won't be Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh, okay.
He actually said that in an interview with Collider.
Well, I like Forever. That's a good
Forever.
one.
I mean, it also could just be, Infinity something else.
Well, I made a joke on Twitter. I'm like, they're really hiding this name, and all it's going to be is Infinity War Part 2.
Just call it. It could be.
Yeah.
Or just call it the Avengers.
Yeah, the Avengers reassemble.
Ooh.
Boom.
As I say, it's like the iPhone. Just call it the iPhone. Doesn't matter what number it is.
Yeah, who cares?
It doesn't matter.
This is the next one.
Yeah.
I like
Avengers.
it. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. I think that post-credit scene in Ant-Man, I'm trying to think what that could be, if it's going to talk to the story of Infinity War.
He didn't have to interact much, just like he's in house arrest. And well, actually, what would be cool and a great ending for a movie like Ant-Man is he's facing off with the villain, and the villain just disappears.
Yeah, that would be great. I was hoping that was going to happen in the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it did not happen because they don't really care about that show anymore. But my last thing I was going to bring up, I do remember what I wanted to say now. When you stayed till the end credits, did you see that they had a little thing in there where the Russos thanked Arrested Development for letting them have... No. Did you know? I
heard about it. Tobias is in the movie?
So Tobias isn't in the movie. His or he might be actually in the collector's room where the Reality Stone is being used and everything. In the background, I know for a fact that at least the Never Nude shorts are there.
Okay.
I don't know if Tobias is there as a blue man as well, but I didn't see it. I had to look it up after because I was like, Arrested Development.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't remember anything in it, so I had to actually look it up. So now I want to see the second time so I can actually pay attention. But I like that little nod because the Russos were like, well, we started with this, and we're now at this level. Let's kind of put something in there. So that's Avengers Infinity War. In the battle versus Snoke versus Captain America, Captain America won this one.
That's pretty easy. Snoke is a pussy. He's easy to beat.
He dies really quick. All right.
Cut him in half.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on our regular show on Wednesday.